Sean, thanks so much for joining me today to speak about AI and help me by contributing to an AI insights report that I'm creating. I might start with myself. For those who don't know me, I'm involved in a number of businesses in Ireland and the US. I'm involved in a tech staffing business, Mason Alexander in Ireland. I'm the co-founder of Leaders of Tech, for which this AI Insights report is being created for. It's a tech community. And Sean, you're involved in that community, so thanks again for your continued support. And then more recently, I'm involved in a company called Enable, which is a managed service software and data engineering business. So we actually specialize in AI readiness. So it's less about advanced AI and more about data preparation, proof of concepts, and some custom API integration, which essentially allows companies converse with their data. And actually begin to leverage AI. So we find a lot of people who are excited about AI and want to get into AI, their data is all over the place. It's unstructured data, and we help them with that. Some cool proof of concepts as well that we're working on with synthetic search and various other things. But that's not why I'm here to talk. We're talking today about an AI topic that we covered in a recent in-person event, which got amazing feedback. So thanks again for that. It was based around the topic of the journey of an organization as they are taking the steps towards AI. And I think a lot of people will find that very interesting. And I've got a couple of questions I can ask, but in general, I just wanted to have a chat to you about AI. So I'll take a stab at an introduction, and you can keep me honest, because I think at this stage we've met a couple of times, so I'm hoping I'm able to do it justice. You worked at Stripe for a few years. You set up their payments engineering team. Before that, you worked at Google for a longer time, actually, in the research labs, where you mentioned you witnessed Google's transition from a mobile-first business to an AI-first business. So definitely very interested to hear about the learnings around culture and different things that you witnessed there. You also worked at Zalando, which also went through an AI revolution. Zalando is a marketplace for fashion. And actually, I've noticed e-commerce is definitely a category or industry that AI is really accelerating in, and it tends to be an industry that play around with bleeding edge technology quite a lot. So I'd love to get your insights around why that is. And you're now the CTO at Algolia, which you mentioned to me is the world's second biggest search engine that nobody's ever heard of. Well, I think a lot more people are hearing about it now, but love to hear a little bit about what you're doing there and a little bit more about what Algolia is. So how close was I? Was that good?
That was pretty close. Thank you so much, James. It's great to be joining you today.
So we might start with, I guess, where you're at today. Just maybe a quick introduction to give a bit of context around your current role and what you're doing with Algolia.
Yeah. So yeah, thanks for having me here. And to give a little background, I joined as the Chief Technology Officer at Algolia. Algolia is a little bit like Stripe. We provide the kind of foundational search technology for the internet. So we're not like a consumer brand. We don't offer like B2C consumer search. But what we do is we power the search box on about 20,000 different websites and apps around the internet. So we are the second biggest search engine by volume. We do about 2 trillion search requests a year. And we're fulfilling those search requests for other websites. So you can think of companies like NBC or Walgreens, and companies that offer e-commerce are a big user of our products. But we were set up as a developer-first platform. So, building a great search engine and great search experience, scaling it and delivering it, it's a really hard thing to do as a developer. So Algolia was always there to help developers build great products and to have search as kind of one of the cornerstone of those products. So we're a developer platform. We sell to other businesses. But because our reach is so large at the moment, I think 1 in 6 internet users actually searches on a website that's powered by Algolia. So we've had to, as a company, really, really scale up. And one of the exciting things that's happening is that search is one of the first kind of industries that's really being transformed in production environments by these new AI technologies. So the kind of large language models and ChatGPT like natural language understanding, we're rebuilding the search stack from the ground up to be able to really truly understand the text, the language, the questions that people put into search boxes, and be able to deliver like far better results to customers.
I feel like ChatGPT has given everybody the impression that AI has just popped up out of nowhere, or certainly generative AI. And that so often happens with technology. When it kind of gets to a mass audience, people just think it popped up out of nowhere. But I mean, AI and big data has been around for many decades. Well, big data certainly, and search has been around for a long time as well. So, talk to me a little bit about the advances and the transforming nature of search.
Yeah. So, AI has been around. We had like a very big wave back in 2015, 2016, where the first neural networks demonstrated that at kind of scale and the size of the data and compute, we could do some really great things. But those first applications were very domain specific. So you could train a model, but it had to solve a very, very narrow problem. And you had to feed it really, really highly structured, clean data. So you could get it to kind of like classify pictures of cats, or you could get it to decide whether to give someone a loan, or you could decide whether, an image had, a spot in it that might look like cancer. But it was very, very narrow. And one of the things that it struggled with is to really understand human language, because human language is very complex. And the models weren't sophisticated or large enough to be able to deal with all of the complexities of human language. So that first wave was very narrow, didn't have great solutions for natural language. What happened in the last year or two is that a new type of model called transformers, which is the T in ChatGPT. Originally, the paper was published in 2017 at Google, but it took several years for researchers and engineers to actually get it working in production with an experience that people found natural enough to find compelling. So when ChatGPT launched, it was really, I think, the kind of like, the homecoming parade, the first introduction where people could use it. And I think this is the next wave of AI, is powered very much around natural language. And the breakthrough has been these models take trillions of web pages, documents, books, blog posts, tweets, like a huge corpus of human language, and it runs it through this enormous training process. And the models that are powering this are like 10, 100 times bigger than these narrow models that we had in the past. So the breakthroughs in GPUs and compute environments and the ability to process data has meant like we've just scaled up what we've been doing by 10, 100x. And it means that these models are actually able to understand human language in a very intuitive and impressive way. So that's really the kind of difference between this wave and the original kind of wave of AI that we've seen kind of in operations for the last 5 or 10 years.
And what about looking into the future? Like, where's search going? What could it look like in the future?
Well, when you think about search, I mean, it's been around since, the late 90s in terms of like a kind of consumer application. But the experience really hasn't changed significantly. Like the underlying technology was always this idea that if you put some words into a search box, that we're going to go off and look through all of the internet pages or look through all the products in an e-commerce store and just find things that match the words, like literally like identically match the words. And this is called keyword matching. And, it's provided a okay experience for a lot of use cases. But it had no concept of the underlying concepts that you were asking for. And so if the article didn't have the exact word, it wouldn't be returned. If you misspelled something, or if there were double meanings, or worse, if you asked a question, or God forbid, put in 5, 6, 7 keywords to get a really targeted answer, keyword search wouldn't perform very well. And it turns out that, let's say an e-commerce environment, somewhere between 50 to 75% of all the queries that people type in to search for things are these kind of like longer queries. And, it may be like, I'm looking for a summer dress that's red, that has this. And when you put those words in, the keyword doesn't really get the concepts that you're looking for. It struggles to find good matches. So the future of search really is in these large language models, where now we're able to truly understand even longer, complex queries. And instead of matching the words, we're taking your query and turning it into what's called a vector. And vectors are like the way we represent all of the concepts of the world in a mathematical way. And we're matching the records to the concepts. And one of the crazy things that we've seen, because obviously we see a lot of search volume coming in, is since ChatGPT was launched, the number of words people are using when they search has doubled. So people are now have this expectation that when they go to a search box, that they're able to actually ask a far more refined question. And therefore, search has to adapt. So we've rebuilt our search engine from the ground up to be able to truly use these new AI models to understand what people are looking for and understand the products in the database or the web pages on the website and be able to match them using true human language understanding. It's incredible the results that we're seeing from this. So when people ask for something specific, if you're able to actually find that needle in the haystack for them using natural language, they're far more likely to buy a product or click on a link or engage with your site. So we're seeing 20-30% increases in shoppers buying products when we actually use AI to understand their language.
It's really interesting because I'm just thinking about myself as a user of search. Back in the day when kind of Google was new, you had to learn how to Google. You had to learn how to search for things. And I can remember, working in recruitment, we use Boolean search, which is essentially just keyword search. And there's other techniques as well, but essentially they're extremely limited. But you do need to learn that skill. You need to learn how to search. And myself, now I'm thinking about what I put into Google or what I put into other search platforms has changed over the years because, my experience has changed and you begin to learn, how to get more back from that search. And it's interesting to see that it's not, this is happening in the background with the kind of the technology that's supporting it, as opposed to just it's always been available and we weren't utilizing it.
Yeah, and people's expectations have changed significantly since ChatGPT.
They only go in one direction though. They always want things to improve. They want things to get better experience, faster. So yeah, it's demanding.
Yeah, and it's funny. I mean, a lot of these websites, in order to use them, you kind of have to ask the user to do a lot of stuff in order to make it work. It's kind of like you just put your database online and you as the user have to figure out, what is the word I need matched? Do I need to do a Boolean search? Do I need to filter? Do I need to do this? And you're in essence like asking the user to figure out how to navigate a database.
Yeah, it's not like ultimately you want to be frictionless. You want the user experience to be excellent, but you also want it to have as little barriers as possible. But asking someone to do things and jump through hoops is where they fall off.
Yeah, and if you went into like a shop, you wouldn't expect to have that kind of experience where you bark keywords at someone.
No, it wouldn't last long in that shop.
Exactly. So you want to use human language. You want to express yourself very specifically, and you want to be understood. And it turns out that when you can do that using AI now, shoppers and web users actually have a far better experience and end up buying more products, becoming more loyal users of your website, and engaging with your content a lot more. So it's very good for businesses and very good for users.
I want to talk about the journey of an organization as they're taking steps towards AI. But just before we jump into that, while we're on the topic of e-commerce, you have a lot of experience in e-commerce. Why is it a industry or, let's call it an industry. Why is it an industry that tends to be at the bleeding edge of adopting technology? I mean, if you recall back to the room that we had the event that we had, there was a lot of people attending that from financial services. We had some leaders of banks, some leaders of insurance companies, and they were quite nervous about their ability to adopt AI. And obviously, they're heavily regulated industries, so that's natural. But talk to me a little bit about the world of e-commerce and why that's been so advanced for some time.
So when you think about the promise of e-commerce, it has huge advantages over kind of the retail shopping experience in person. And one of the major advantages is you can have a huge inventory, right? You're not constrained by the physical retail space that you have. So a lot of the e-commerce companies have grown into larger and larger marketplaces. And, at Zalando, we had, over 1 million SKUs, right? 1 million different items you could buy. And that offers incredible choice to customers. It's one of the reasons they love e-commerce. But it also creates a new challenge, which is the paradox of choice. If you were to walk into a retail store with 1 million items, it's like a warehouse. It'd be very, very hard to navigate and find what you're looking for. So AI has been, the most natural way in which you can create a personal shopping experience across a huge inventory of products, but also be able to start to understand your customer as they come and return multiple times. And so the e-commerce industry is fiercely competitive. And so most companies have realized that investments in technology, particularly around AI, give them a competitive advantage. When customers can find the needle in the haystack, the perfect product they're looking for, they'll end up buying and returning as a customer and becoming a loyal customer. And that experience really changes the whole economic model of an e-commerce site. The more loyal and the more revenue you can generate from a user, the better your business model, the better you can compete on price, the better you can acquire new customers. So fiercely competitive industry. AI has given a real advantage to those companies that have deployed it well. And so, yeah, I think it's been clearly one of the leaders in applying AI to a consumer product for those reasons.
Do you think there's a culture of or an openness to experimenting and kind of bringing, investing in research, but then experimenting and then turning things on and off as they work?
Yeah, I think this has been one of the enablers when you become an AI-enabled business, is that you have to become a high-velocity experimentation business, right? It's very difficult to, ahead of time, understand what's going to work and not work across a large user base, a diverse set of products. And in the past, what would happen is humans would merchandise the products. So you'd have actual individual buyers, merchandisers who had intuition about products and customers that would manually figure out, which shoes to put on the front page of the shoe category, or how to price, how to lay out items. And that's still a really effective way when you have a small selection of products. But when you've got like 500,000 products, you can't have people doing this manually. And it turns out that a lot of the manual intuition that people have may not be the optimal strategy. So really letting AI kind of experiment and learn from how customers are shopping has become a scalable way to take that intuitive, human, curated, merchandised experience and superpowering it across a much bigger selection of items, a much bigger kind of e-commerce operation.
Yeah, I guess it's removing the ego, removing the bias, and applying raw fact data. Now, I'm sure I can make mistakes too, but the margin of error is going to be much smaller.
Or even the way I like to think it is that a lot of e-commerce stores are run by passionate people who really care about the products, they care about their customers, but they're just not able to scale that intuition across the size of operations. You can't hire thousands of people, but instead you want to have a smaller team of passionate merchandisers who really understand the products, but give them the superpower of AI. So they're able to train and guide the AI about what they think is right. And the AI can then go off and learn from them and apply it automatically across the whole operation. So AI is a lot about supercharging kind of
Mm.
human creativity and talent rather than replacing it. Because
I
the
really
AI,
like that. I think too many people talk about um, and with all changes comes fear. People are always fearful of new things and change. But I think AI has been completely hammered with, it's going to take all of our jobs, and it's going to change everything, and it's doom and gloom sometimes. But it's much like the calculator. Whenever the calculator was invented, a lot of people didn't like it back then, but I think we don't really use it anymore. I use it on my phone the odd time, but probably more than I should. But these are tools in the end of the day, and people will always be needed. Uh, Obviously, there are some sectors of jobs that will be impacted. That's for sure. But I think if people start looking at them more of how do we use this to supercharge people, maybe their roles can evolve and climb up um, the ladder of how much value they're adding to the organization, or what types of responsibilities they're having, and broadening that rather than siloing it into a cookie cutter type of work, because that's where AI will just rip it out.
I agree. It's scaling human creativity and talent
Mm.
in a way that I think is going to be very powerful. And people who are creative and talented and passionate about things will gain a lot more value out of their work and their talents because they have AI to scale it across a bigger impact area.
Mm. So I kind of teed this up earlier, but I do want to talk a little bit about primarily because so the audience at Leaders of Tech is mixed in one way, in the sense that we've got people who are from finance, people from HR, operations, obviously huge amount of people from technology, and probably about the biggest cohort are developers. But people come to Leaders of Tech for two main reasons. They are a leader within technology, and they want to pay what they've learned forward and help people and mentor or join an event and give back. Or they're an aspiring leader of technology, or they're getting started in their career. We have lots of students as well who join Leaders of Tech just to keep on top of the trends and what's happening in technology. So for an audience that's quite mixed, but largely all will be impacted in some way by AI. What we start with the organization first, and then we'll move to the maybe advice to individuals, engineers, and people that work in technology or digital type of work. But if we start with the organization, and bearing in mind that we have financial services, we've got people working in government, we've got people working in all the whole breadth of industry. What is your view on the journey of an organization as they are taking the steps towards AI?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think particularly in the last kind of 12 months, I think every organization is asking themselves the question, how can AI help us? And how can we deploy AI? I think every leadership team, every CTO, and also, every kind of individual contributor in the tech industry is thinking about how is this going to change the way I work, the way I create value. So, everyone is talking about this and trying to figure this out at the moment. And the first thing is we're still very early. Like, I know the kind of hype cycle and the excitement around a technology normally precedes the hard work of implementing and rolling it out by 5 or 10 years. And if you look at the internet, if you look at mobile, if you look at cloud, there was always this kind of like burst moment where everyone gets excited by it. Everyone realizes the impact it's going to have. But it generally takes 5 or 10 years after that big aha moment for the hard work of it rolling out to happen. So the first thing I'd say is that this is a longer journey, right? This is not an overnight transformation. And the reason why it's going to be a longer journey is that it's going to take an entirely new skill set in order for companies to be successful. So when you think about it, there are like 3 ways that from a kind of people and capabilities perspective, your organization can start to transform. The first is that you can just buy the technology in, right? So vendors and SaaS companies and companies providing business to business products like Algolia we're all transforming our products right now to incorporate AI. So to give another example of a great Irish company, Intercom, have really incorporated ChatGPT and this technology into their core product over the last 6 months. So if you're a customer of theirs, you're going to get the benefits of all of this technology without having to change anything in your own organization. So I think looking to vendors and looking to be able to buy the technology in is a very powerful starting point in the near term.
Yeah.
Secondly, you kind of want to ask yourself, do we actually need to build this capability in-house? And if you do, there are kind of two ways to think about it. The first, and I think this is an absolute requirement, is that if you've got a software engineering team and you realize that the product you're building needs to be transformed with AI, you need to bring your existing organization up the skills curve. So when I was in Google in, was it 2015, when we made the company-wide decision to move from a mobile-first mindset to a AI-first mindset, every single engineer in the company went through an AI boot camp. And so over the course of 12 months, everyone was able to attend, I think it was a 2 to 4 week training course where they got the opportunity to start programming and building applications and learning how machine learning worked. So we were very conscious that everyone in the organization needed to upskill. And that was the best way to bring AI into each of the different areas of the business.
Was that exclusive to engineering? Because you're talking about programming there, or was there areas outside of engineering that were also brought on that journey?
Yeah, it started with engineering and product, but the programs were then tailored for different parts of the business. So we had a lot of data analysts, we had a lot of people in finance and other parts of the organization who also went through different training programs. They weren't learning to code, but they were learning how to apply it and use the tools that were developed internally to be able to do their jobs better. So I think the first thing is upskilling. The second thing is hiring and building up specialist capability inside the organization. So what I've seen work well is you start with a centralized team of data scientists who are able to provide like a kind of a consulting project-based support for the organization. So the organization might identify, here are the top 10 areas that we think AI can help us work through. And then this team is like a consulting SWAT team, and they can help jump into the finance department or jump into the engineering department or jump into the operations and work and deploy products and solutions around AI, whilst at the same time upskilling those teams as they work on those projects. So I think first thing, figure out buy versus build. You can buy a lot of great stuff. You don't need to rebuild everything from scratch. But as you are transforming your organization, you need to upskill while at the same time probably hiring in some capabilities to help work on projects and facilitate the upskilling of each of the teams.
Definitely agree. I think buying, not building, is probably going to be the answer for 9 or 19 out of 20 companies, probably a lot more than that. And to be honest, how you described that SWAT team is exactly how we describe our business Enable. So we would be the outsourced option of that internal kind of, we call it the SAS, but SWAT works as just as well. And I think what we're doing is we're lining ourselves up to support companies who are ultimately going to be buying AI from vendors or existing vendors, because they're maybe they're not a software engineering company. Their product is not software, and they shouldn't.
I wouldn't recommend, apart from the most sophisticated companies in the world, shouldn't be trying to build, train, and develop their own AI search models. It just doesn't make sense for most companies to do that. Using a vendor like Algolia that has dedicated our entire business to building solutions like that makes more sense.
Absolutely. But there's lots of companies out there that have their data all over the place, and the way we look at it is they need to clean the house before they can even attempt to leverage AI, or even start exploring what those maybe 10 opportunities are internally in their business. And I think that's where we see ourselves helping a lot of customers, because unstructured data is just a commonplace in companies, and so it's an interesting place to play. So talk to me a little bit about, okay, so obviously if you're an engineering company or a data science, you're in a company that has already these functions, you might have to transform your culture. What about a company that's, not an engineering company at their heart? What about if you look at maybe even financial services sector, or maybe a healthcare provider, insurance company who's heavily regulated, how do they begin to change their culture to adapt to AI, whether they're a buyer or a builder?
Yeah, it's a great question. And as I said, I think, one of the first things to understand is whether or not you actually need to build in-house AI data science capabilities. But the one thing that you absolutely have to do in-house first is to really understand the data that you have. And you mentioned this, but if you're in one of these companies, step one is to have a very strong data strategy. Data is the lifeblood of these AI models. And often these companies have a very big strategic advantage in the data that they actually have inside their organization. But because there's not been a use case for the data, like building an AI product before, they may have not invested in it, or may have not built out highly structured data sets, or even collected data from their users. It could be that there's a bunch of data that their users might be able to give them, but because there wasn't a use case, using AI before, they haven't prioritized getting the data. So I absolutely agree. I think if you're in one of these industries, you should try to figure out your data advantage, figure out what more you could be collecting. And then there are a lot of different platforms up and down the technology stack that you can be using. So one of it could just be a straight buy, right? Where someone comes in, they provide the solution to you, and because your data is in good order, you can kind of immediately get value. But it may be that you actually need to go down the stack a little bit. And, there are a lot of platforms where you can train and build custom models without any engineering skills. So when we were at Google, a lot of our analysts on the finance team or the operations team were able to use kind of no code, easy to click here, upload your data here, tell us what you want. And we were able to generate, build, and deploy models into production without having to have data science capabilities, but more having data capabilities. So I think a lot of the kind of analysts that you might have inside a finance operations, or even sales department, could really leverage some of these self-serve platforms to be able to start building models and experimenting without needing to figure out all the AI, the data science, or coding.
It's funny you mention finance or that space. We've had a lot of traction in the office of the CFO, where they're looking at how do we basically make better data-driven decisions. How do we get the data we need to implement proper business intelligence or basic data analytics? And obviously AI is the advanced stage of that, and many companies will plug into a major vendor that they're already probably subscribed to. But the office of the CFO is definitely have an appetite to get their hands around clean data, which is for obvious reasons. If we kind of switch gears a little bit and look at, rather than an organization, if we look at individuals, so we can finish on this, but we have organizations who take part in Leaders of Tech, but primarily it's individuals who sign up, who join, who contribute, or who learn from us. And like I said, they come from all walks of life. But let's talk about the largest cohort of our memberships, which is people who are working in technology, primarily software engineers, data scientists. What would your advice be to these people? I think they'll be relieved to say they have another 10 years to get their act together, because a lot of people don't think that, based on our recent survey to, I think, 300 software engineers. But what would your advice be to people who are already working in the technology space, but want to prepare themselves for what AI is going to bring?
Yeah. One of the things I love about working in technology is that everything changes every 5 or 10 years.
That's true.
Never boring. There's never a static environment. And often when things do change, they change very rapidly. So you might go through periods where, 2, 3, 4 years doesn't seem like many things are changing, and then all of a sudden everything changes quickly.
Hmm.
So, at least in my lifetime, I've seen, .com, mobile, cloud, first AI wave, cryptocurrency, the second AI wave here.
Hmm.
So if you're in the technology industry, you have to be deeply curious and deeply interested in learning all the time. There's no way that you can neglect trying to kind of understand the latest waves of new technology. And typically, I find the people that are most successful are the people that are genuinely deeply curious about these technologies. And
Hmm.
a simple thing I always ask is like, what are you reading in your spare time? And although I love a good fiction novel, and I love to read the newspaper, I genuinely get very excited about learning and reading books on data science, experimentation, hardware, whatever it is.
Hmm.
And I feel like that's the kind of if you want to be successful in the technology industry, you have to take a deep curiosity outside of the workplace and educate yourself. It's not as easy to get on the job formal education inside of companies with a lot of the stuff.
Hmm.
Uh, you have to kind of be reading, the Hacker Newses of the world, or picking up a book and trying to figure it out and learn on your own. So I do feel like that's kind of one of the things, if you're an individual contributor and you're wondering about how to kind of advance in the industry, be genuinely curious and
Hmm.
genuinely take an interest outside of working hours in this technology. Play with it, experiment with it, get up and running with a demo, do a hackathon. These are all the things that really advance your skills.
Yeah.
And don't expect that your employer is going to provide all of this for you, because they're struggling as well to figure out how to do this.
It's good advice, and it's very practical. But I do feel like people have no excuse this day and age. There's so much resources out there. YouTube alone,
Oh,
without even talking about kind of technology specific resources, you can learn anything. So like I give people advice on how to build their network, and my advice is always be proactive. When you need your network, it's too late to build it. So make it part of your life and chip away at it as much as you can, um, and contribute to it. Like you have to give value before you can take value, and that's probably that's across a lot of things.
we used to
Um,
do a lot of employee to employee learning. So an
hmm,
employee would go off and read a book or watch YouTube video or do a hackathon, and then turn back up into the workplace and educate their colleagues.
I like that.
Because I think it's very hard to expect the kind of like HR department to figure out how to do training programs for this stuff.
Hmm.
And so I think, employee to employee teaching and learning is also a great way to showcase your skills internally and help to
Yeah,
upskill everyone else around you.
it's a great way to learn something, because if you need to be able to articulate something or to be as comfortable to showcase it to people or to talk about it, you're going to be pretty on top of this, and there's a bit of pressure there as well, so that's always healthy. I think okay, well, in summary, be proactive, don't be reactive. Find time in your work week, and value it as well. Like I think a lot of people will read books, and a lot of people will invest in education, but they will see it as secondary to their prime work. I think they need to kind of look at it as on par, like it's as important.
Big difference is that if you feel like it's work and you feel like it's something that you
Mm.
don't want to do, then it's always going to be challenging. But if you're actually deeply curious and excited about learning, then it doesn't feel like work, and you actually get energy out of it, and you'll end up doing a lot of it. And to be honest, you do this as a ritual or a habit week in, week out. It compounds to a lot of knowledge and learning, and you can upskill pretty quickly if you make a habit out of learning and curiosity every week.
I like that. Right, we might leave it there. Sean, thanks so much again for your help on this. just to share with people, there's a number of interviews that are going to be a part of this AI Insights report. And what I'll do as well is I might shoot you over a couple of questions that come in from some people that you might be able to expand on. But the feedback from the event that we did it live was fantastic. And I'm sure the feedback from this will be good too. So thanks again, Sean. Really appreciate it.
No problem. Really enjoyed it. Thanks for having me on, James.
Cheers.